It's open! Ah!
It was the winter of 2023 when I made the biggest mistake of my life, a decision that still haunts my waking hours, stealing sleep, leaving me staring at the ceiling, wondering if I truly escaped. I'd gone up to my uncle's cabin in rural Montana, way out past Flathead Lake, seeking solitude. I needed to unplug, to escape the ceaseless hum of city life, the endless scroll of news feeds. I thought the quiet, the snow-dusted pines, the sheer isolation would be therapeutic. For the first week, it was exactly that. I read, I hiked, I chopped wood. The air was crisp, clean. Nights were utterly silent, broken only by the crackle of the fireplace and the distant hoot of an owl. The sky out there was something else entirely. A canvas of a million pinprick stars, the Milky Way a pale, ethereal smear. I remember lying on the porch swing, bundled in blankets, just watching it all. Then, one night, I saw it. A light. It was high up, moving steadily, but too fast for a plane, too erratic for a satellite. It paused, shifted direction sharply, then zipped across the expanse of sky, vanishing behind the western peaks. I dismissed it, of course. Maybe a meteor, or some classified military craft. This was Montana, after all, remote bases weren't uncommon. I went inside, stoked the fire, and tried to forget it. But the lights kept coming. Not every night, but every few. Sometimes one, sometimes two, dancing in tandem, performing aerial ballets that defied any known physics. My initial curiosity slowly, subtly, began to curdle into unease. I found myself scanning the sky more often, feeling a prickle of gooseflesh even when nothing was there. The absolute silence of the woods, once comforting, now felt heavy, expectant. It felt like a held breath. My paranoia truly set in after a few more days. I started hearing things, or thinking I did. A faint thump from the roof, like a snowdrift shifting, but the air was still. A soft, rhythmic scratching sound from the back wall of the cabin, too light to be an animal, too persistent to be the wind. I'd grab my flashlight, peer out into the darkness, but see nothing but the skeletal silhouettes of trees, their branches laden with snow. The darkness pressed in, deeper than I'd ever experienced. My own shadow, cast by the lamplight, seemed to twist and stretch, mimicking my growing anxiety. One evening, I was cooking dinner, listening to the old crackly radio I'd brought. The static suddenly flared, a harsh screech that made me jump. The cabin lights flickered wildly, then died, plunging everything into darkness. My heart hammered against my ribs. I scrambled for my headlamp, fumbling with the switch. When the beam cut through the black, the radio was silent, dead. I tried the light switch again. Nothing. The power was out, which wasn't unusual in winter storms, but there hadn't been a storm. The air, however, was suddenly freezing. It felt like the temperature inside the cabin had plummeted 20 degrees in seconds. I bundled up, trying to tell myself it was just a localized outage. But that scratching sound started again, louder now, coming from directly beneath the floorboards, right where I stood. It wasn't the scuttling of mice, it was deliberate, like something was dragging a fine-toothed rake across wood. And then, a new sound, a faint, almost imperceptible hum, vibrating through the floor, a sound that bypassed my ears and resonated directly in my bones. I grabbed the heavy, old hunting rifle my uncle kept in the corner. My hands trembled, clammy and cold. I tried to convince myself it was just nerves, that I was overtired, overstimulated by the silence. But I knew, deep down, it was more than that. I felt, watched. A chilling, pervasive sensation of being under an intense, unseen gaze. I edged towards the front window, peering through a small gap in the curtains. The moon was nearly full, casting long, stark shadows. The snow-covered clearing glittered. Nothing. Just trees, and the vast, indifferent wilderness. Then, my breath hitched. In the deepest shadow, at the very edge of the tree line, something moved. It was tall, impossibly thin, almost like a stick figure, but not quite. It seemed to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. And it was swaying, subtly, rhythmically. Not like a tree in the wind. More like, observing. My eyes strained, trying to resolve the amorphous shape. It shifted, and for a terrifying fraction of a second, I thought I saw an appendage, long and spindly, lift and point directly at the cabin. At me. My blood ran cold, a glacial current through my veins. This wasn't a bear. This wasn't a hunter. This was something profoundly, terrifyingly other. I dropped to the floor, crawling on my hands and knees, my heart in frantic drum against my ribs. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I didn't want it to see me. I hugged the rifle to my chest, my knuckles white. The hum intensified, a low, guttural thrumming that seemed to fill the very air around me. I could feel it buzzing in my teeth. Suddenly, the world outside the cabin was bathed in an unearthly, pulsating blue light. It wasn't coming from the sky, but from everywhere. Through the gaps in the curtains, I saw the snow glow, the trees cast in alien hues. I risked another look. Standing in the clearing, directly in front of my cabin, were three of them. Taller than any man, unnaturally slender, their limbs too long, too delicate. They moved with a disturbing fluidity, like water or smoke. Their heads were large, almond-shaped, with eyes that were utterly black and vast, reflecting the blue light like pools of ink. No mouths, no visible noses. Just smooth, pale skin, stretched taut over something skeletal. They weren't looking at the cabin. They were looking through it. Looking at me. One of them raised a hand, a three-fingered, elongated hand, and moved it slowly, deliberately, tracing a line in the air. As it did, the blue light intensified, and the hum became a high-pitched whine that threatened to shatter my eardrums. I felt a pressure, a crushing weight in my chest, as if all the air was being sucked out of the room. My vision blurred. I could feel something, an invisible probe, touching my mind, searching. Not painful, but invasive. Horrifyingly intimate. This wasn't an attack. This was a study. I was an specimen. Adrenaline, pure and potent, flooded my system. I knew, with absolute certainty, that if I stayed, would be lost. I wouldn't just be observed, I would be taken. My only chance was to run. But where? The truck keys were on the kitchen counter, deep in the cabin's dark heart. I moved. Not thinking, just reacting. I crab-walked through the living room, rifle still clutched tight, my eyes darting frantically towards the shadows, the windows. The humming and the blue light were pervasive, filling every inch of space. I reached the kitchen, fumbled blindly for the keys, knocking over a stack of plates with a crash that echoed like thunder in the silence. The blue light outside pulsed violently. The hum suddenly ceased. A profound, aching silence descended, even heavier than before. I froze, my hand on the cold metal of the keys. Had they heard me? Were they coming? I risked another glance out the kitchen window. The clearing was empty. The blue light was gone. Only the cold, normal moonlight illuminated the snow. They were gone. Just gone. I didn't waste a second. Keys in hand, I burst out the back door, stumbling through the deep snow towards my truck, which was parked just 100 feet away. I wrenched the door open, threw myself inside, fumbling with the ignition. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. I slammed it into reverse, tires spinning, spraying snow as I tore down the long, winding dirt track. I didn't look back. I just drove, pushing the old truck faster than it was ever meant to go. I didn't stop until I hit the highway, then a gas station in the first small town I found, miles and miles away. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold my coffee. I called my uncle, made up some excuse about the pipes freezing, and told him I was leaving the cabin early. I never told anyone what truly happened that night. Not really. How could I? But the terror, the memory of those dark, unblinking eyes, it never left me. I thought I had escaped. I really did. But sometimes, when I'm alone in my apartment, I catch myself humming that sound. The deep, resonant thrumming that vibrated through the cabin floor. And then, there are the dreams, vivid, disturbing dreams where I'm not in my bed, but on a cold, smooth surface, under a pulsating blue light, those slender, three-fingered hands gently, expertly, working on me. Not hurting, not threatening. Just, modifying dash. And when I wake up, there's always a faint, metallic taste in my mouth, and a tiny, almost invisible scar behind my left ear, a mark I never noticed before that night, but one that somehow feels fresh. I escaped the cabin. But I wonder, every single day, if they ever truly let me go. I often wonder if I ever truly came back from that cabin, or if something else did, wearing my skin. It was late 2022, and I'd rented the remote place in the Montana woods, needing an escape from the relentless city noise, the constant hum of news cycles. I was looking for silence, for peace. What I found was something far, far worse. The cabin was perfect, nestled deep in a valley, miles from the nearest paved road. No cell service, no Wi-Fi, just me, a stack of books, and the vast, untamed wilderness. The first few days were bliss. I hiked, read by the crackling fire, and watched the stars erupt into a dazzling, unimaginable tapestry across the ink-black sky. That's when it started, subtly at first. On the third night, as I sat on the porch, sipping lukewarm coffee, I saw it. A light, high above the distant peaks. It wasn't an airplane, it wasn't a satellite. It moved too fast, too erratically, banking impossible turns in absolute silence. My logical brain tried to dismiss it, a military exercise, perhaps, or a trick of the light. But a chill, completely unrelated to the crisp night air, ran down my spine. I watched until it vanished, leaving only the crushing quiet. The next morning, I brushed it off. sleep deprivation, an overactive imagination. But then the small things began to accumulate. The cabin's ancient radio, which had crackled perfectly, started emitting strange bursts of static, even when turned off. The lights would flicker, ever so slightly, for no reason. And that feeling, the persistent, prickling sensation of being watched. I'd glance up from my book, certain I'd catch a glimpse of something, but there was never anything there. Just the woods, silent and still. As the days bled into a week, the lights returned, more frequently, closer this time. They would hover for minutes, then dart away like startled fish. One evening, I was chopping wood, and when I looked up, there was a perfect circle of scorched earth in the middle of a clearing I'd walked through just hours before. No sign of a fire, no ash, just the ground burned to a crisp. My axe slipped. I started locking the cabin door at night, checking it twice, then a third time. Sleep became a luxury, stolen in short, fitful bursts. Then came the night the power went out. It was a cold evening, the kind where the wind howls through the pines like a banshee. I was reading by the fireplace when the lights flickered violently, then died, plunging the cabin into absolute darkness. My flashlight beam danced nervously around the room, illuminating dust motes and the shadows they cast. That's when I heard it, a low, rhythmic hum, vibrating through the floorboards, through my very bones. It wasn't the wind. It was coming from above. Panic clawed at my throat. I stumbled to the window, peering through a gap in the old curtains. The sky was no longer dark. A brilliant, blinding white light pulsed directly over the cabin, casting long, impossibly distorted shadows of the trees. The humming grew louder, a painful, high-frequency whine that burrowed into my skull. Suddenly, a dull thud echoed from the roof. Then another. And another. Slow, deliberate steps, heavy and rhythmic. My blood ran cold. Something was on the roof. Something impossibly large, impossibly heavy. I froze, my heart hammering against my ribs, convinced I was about to die. Then, from the corner of my eye, a movement outside the window. Silhouetted against the otherworldly glow, at the edge of the tree line, were figures. Tall, slender, impossibly still. They weren't human. Not like anything I'd ever seen. Their forms were elongated, almost skeletal, and their heads, they seemed too large, too smooth. I couldn't make out any features, but I felt their gaze, a cold, clinical intensity that pierced through the glass, through my very soul. They were watching me. Waiting. The doorknob began to turn. Slowly. Quietly. My breath hitched. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing it was all a nightmare, a cruel joke. But the hum was real. The shapes were real. The terror was real. The door creaked open just a fraction. A sliver of that blinding white light spilled into the cabin, illuminating the dust in the air like a shimmering curtain. And with it, a strange, sterile scent, like ozone and something metallic, something alien. I felt a pressure, an invisible force, pinning me to the floor. My muscles locked. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't even blink. Then, the light surged. It wasn't just coming from the crack in the door, it was everywhere. It filled the cabin, pure and obliterating. I felt myself lifting, slowly, impossibly, off the floor. My body felt weightless, stretched thin, like taffy. My mind screamed, but no sound escaped. I saw fleeting images, a vast, curved wall of metallic gray, impossibly smooth, and then the shapes, closer now, looming over me, their faces indistinct in the glare. I felt a cold touch, an invasive probe, a sensation of being utterly vulnerable, dissected without mercy. There was no pain, only an unimaginable emptiness, a silent horror that transcended physical sensation. I was a specimen, a thing to be examined. And then, nothing. I woke up on the cabin floor, exactly where I had been. Sunlight streamed through the windows, warm and familiar. My head throbbed, a dull ache behind my eyes. I was covered in a thin sheen of sweat, my clothes disheveled. The radio was silent, the lights were off. Everything seemed normal. Too normal. My hands trembled as I pushed myself up. My body ached, a profound exhaustion settling deep in my bones. I stumbled to the kitchen, desperate for water, my eyes scanning the room, half expecting to see a tall, slender figure in the corner. Nothing. Just the comforting, rustic familiarity of the cabin. But then I saw it. The calendar. It was still September 2023 when I had arrived, looking forward to the crisp autumn air. But the page now, dog-eared and stained, was for December 2023. 3 months. 3 months were gone. I remember nothing of that time. Not a single memory, a single dream. Just a void, a chilling blankness where 90 days should have been. And the worst part? I still feel it. Every single night. That persistent hum, vibrating beneath my feet. The prickling sensation of being watched. And the knowledge, deep in my gut, that I never truly came back alone. They left something with me, or took something from me, and the world has never felt quite right since. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I can see their faint, impossible silhouettes reflected in my own eyes.